Mangrove is the first of a five-part series by Black British director Steve McQueen, focused on the experiences of Black Caribbean people in the UK between, I think it's 1968 and 1982. I watched Mangrove on BBC iPlayer this week, and I think the film, in short, is really good. It's a really great start to the series. It's got some captivating performances from various actors and actresses, some of whom are really well known, surprisingly to me, actually. Some really good cinematography, some great views, some great scenery from London town. And I think it really captures the mixture of dread and revolutionary fervor amongst African Caribbeans in the UK of that era. And also the musical backdrop is excellent. The reggae and the rocksteady, dominated by various smash hits from Toots and the Maytals. Rest in peace, Toots Hibbert. It's very timely that his music was featured so much in that film. So I'm going to give some thoughts on the film, some brief thoughts in this live stream on the film. And I'm going to be also reading some extracts from this little pamphlet here, which is called Black History from Both Sides of the Atlantic. And it's from the hint as to what the relevance of it is, that it's from the Black Panther Party of Britain. The main title was the Black Rebellion, and you'll see there that is a panther. And I'll read from this pamphlet. It's a collection of material written by members of Panther. The first time various articles and essays relating to the Black experiences in the United States and also in the United Kingdom. But I'm going to read it because the Black Panther Party in Britain is featured in the film Mangrove. Okay, so let's get started with my thoughts on the film. So Mangrove centers on the real life story of the so-called Mangrove Nine. These are nine Black people from the Caribbean who were basically targeted by the British state in what you basically would now call a show trial, a race show trial in 1970. So Mangrove, it's the name of a restaurant in a part of West London called Notting Hill. It was opened by a brother called Frank Crichlow, who's now who's deceased. And he was a Trinidadian who moved to the UK in 1953, I believe, in his very early 20s. Notting Hill in those days was a largely Black and largely working class area. And I say that because many people might only really know Notting Hill, particularly if you're not in the UK, you might only know Notting Hill from the film from like the 90s with Hugh Grant. And you might know it as a really well-to-do area with like these massive houses and so forth. And that's what it is today. But 50, 60 years ago, that was not what it was. And I'm going to talk a lot about that, as I mentioned. I'm going to talk a lot when I quote from this book here. We're gonna learn a little bit more about Notting Hill in those days. Now, African Caribbeans, Black people, had been catching hell. The context, the important context behind this Mangrove film is that Black people in the UK had been catching hell for a long, long time. And yes, greetings, Mind Over Matter. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, big ups. Make sure if you're watching this live stream, make sure you hit the like button and also give us your comments. I'll go through the comments as I can throughout the discussion. So going back to Notting Hill in those days, predominantly working class and a very large Black community in that area. Black people had been catching hell in this country from when they came in en masse for the first time, really in the 1950s. And I'm going to read now from this pamphlet, from this Black Rebellion pamphlet, and I'm going to read specifically from an essay called "The History of Black in Britain: From Slavery to Rebellion," because I really think it gives a flavor. You can't really understand the whole Mangrove situation without really understanding what Black people were going through at that time. So I'm going to read a little bit from this, just a couple of little snippets from this pamphlet. And we go. This is talking about in the post-World War II era. It says that large-scale immigration was becoming a reality despite the concerns of a royal commission, as certain sections of industry could not maintain production without it. They sought and found migrant labor from the colonies in the Caribbean and the Indian subcontinent. This is important to know. Why were Black people coming here? Why were Black people and Asians in particular, what were they doing here? Why were they coming here? They were coming here because during the Second World War, the cost of living had almost doubled in the West Indies and the Indian subcontinent, with large-scale unemployment, no dole, no children's allowances, no social security, and active encouragement by the government and employers to come and work in Britain. Many made the journey in the hope of a better life. Most who came had illusions that with British citizenship, they would be treated equally and fairly. Their initial intention wasn't actually to settle, but to stay until they had made enough money to return home. These illusions were quickly shattered. Why? They were based in slum dwellings in decaying inner city areas. Although they had no difficulty in finding employment, they were given the jobs that whites did not want to do. Work with long hours and low pay. In the late 1950s, more than half of West Indian men in London had jobs which were far below their level of skill and experience. Black workers were concentrated in post offices, buildings, textiles, factories, railways, and hospitals. They suffered terrible conditions in work and outside of work. They faced discrimination in housing, color bars in pubs and clubs, and sometimes physical attacks on the streets. Now the next bit I'm going to read is, brace yourself, because this is from a member of Parliament in the House of Commons in 1953. And this gives a context as to what Black people were facing as far as the system, as far as the state was concerned. It wasn't just interpersonal discrimination from employers and this, that, and the other. Listen to this quote. Let us remember that 95% of them are primitive people. One of the reasons they are not generally accepted into hotels, this is someone in the Houses of Parliament saying this, is because their sanitary habits are not all that could be desired. It is well known that a large number of Africans in East and Central Africa are riddled with a disease of a very unfortunate kind. I will not dwell on that very delicate subject, but I think that honourable members who have experience will already agree that the attitude of the African towards women and sexual matters is entirely different from the attitude of the general run of Europeans. It is a commonplace practice among Africans to put children to sleep by excitation of their urogenital organs. I mean, what the effect of alcohol upon an African is remarkable. And he says, I admit that sometimes alcohol has a remarkable effect on Europeans, but speaking generally, alcohol seems to bring out all the evil instincts in the African in the most astonishing way. These views and practices are due to the psychological makeup of those primitive people from time immemorial. So that's an MP, B. Craddock, in the House of Commons in May 1953, talking about Africans. And what it's referring to Africans, majority of the immigrants, the Black immigrants at that time were from the Caribbean. But it gives you a flavor as to what the kinds of opposition that Black people were facing at that time. This is the context. This is the context of the Mangrove film. And Notting Hill itself, the area of Notting Hill actually featured race riots in 1958. I was going to read this, but I probably won't read this whole thing. But basically, to summarize, in the late 1950s, Teddy Boys, you know Teddy Boys, this kind of subculture of people called Teddy Boys. It sounds nice, doesn't it? It's Teddy Boys. Well, okay, with their 1950, with their kind of Edwardian look that they had. But basically, they went around, egged on by what's his name? Oswald Mosley and the fascists of that time. Oswald Mosley, by the way, who could have been found in the 1930s, so 20 years before, marching through London doing fascist salutes, a full-on Nazi, before the Second World War started. Him and his folks went around basically encouraging these Teddy Boys to physically attack and beat up Black people in Nottingham, first of all, but also in Notting Hill in 1958. And I'm gonna quote a little bit from this pamphlet again, because it gives a little bit of context. So remember, Mangrove is set in Notting Hill in West London. And this, have a look at this. Typical of the arguments used at the time was that of Labour MP for Kensington North, which is where Notting Hill is, Mr. Rogers, who told the Times that the quote unquote immigrants were occupying accommodation which is needed by white people. He also told the Daily Sketch that, quote, the government must introduce legislation quickly to end the tremendous influx of coloured people from the Commonwealth. Overcrowding has fostered, and this is really key for the Mangrove story. Overcrowding has fostered vice, drugs, prostitution, and the use of knives. For years, the white people have been tolerant. Now their tempers are up. And then it goes on to talk about how the Conservatives really took up the mantle, and it gives the infamous story about how in the general election of 1964, Peter Griffiths, a Tory candidate at Smethwick, Birmingham, fought the 1964 election on an openly racist platform with the slogan, quote, if you want a nigger neighbour, vote Labour, unquote. And he won his seat. So that is the context, that is the backdrop to the late 1960s. We're coming now into the late 1960s, and this is where this film, the events unfold. In 1968, I believe the film starts. The film really captures the dread. In one of the opening scenes, when Frank Crichlow, the owner, is walking through the streets of Notting Hill, he passes by some graffiti, and on the back of the behind him, the graffiti behind him says "Powell for Prime Minister" or something, or "Powell for Prime Minister," something like that, in big blue letters. Enoch Powell was a member of Parliament for the Conservative Party, and in 1968, that year, he had galvanized racists across the country with his infamous speech, which has been dubbed the Rivers of Blood speech, in Birmingham, whereby he railed against non-white immigration. He quoted one of the constituents who said something like, in 10 to 15 years, the black man is going to have the whip hand over the white man. And that was the fervor, that was the anti-black, and the fervor that was really being whipped up during that time. And successive governments started to pass all these different legislations to clamp down on non-white immigration. The film shows how, in that context, in this dread context, the opening of the Mangrove restaurant was seen as a statement, a huge statement of intent on the part of black people in that community. At last, they had this area, this space that they could call their own, that they could have their own space to be free, some kind of freedom within the bounds of this multi-directional, multifaceted racism that they were facing. Now, one of the things I really like about the early parts of the film, there are a lot of really good scenes where there's music, there's camaraderie and just enjoyment and joy in that restaurant. And one character, or one person who's a really key part of it is the actress played by the actress Llewellyn Gideon. And if you know Llewellyn Gideon from The Real McCoy, in The Real McCoy, she plays this character who's a proprietor of a Caribbean restaurant called Misery's, and she's like this character that she plays in Mangrove is almost like a reprise of that character. So that was a nice little touch, a nice little tip of the hat to our kind of recent history. Everything's going great at that stage, and of course it doesn't last, because in come the police, led by one PC Frank Pulley, who is played really well. I didn't take a note of the actor, but he conveys it really well. He's like really the skullduggery. He really hates black people. He just wants them out, and he terrorizes them. He's constantly leading his band of officers to raid the restaurant, and to beat up people, to beat up the owner, and to kind of to give them a good kicking as often as he can do. And he does it really, really well. Thanks for the comments. Make sure you like, by the way, if you're joining live, and I will come back to the comments a bit later as well. So bear with me. It's not going to be a really long stream today. So yeah, PC Frank Pulley, he's one of the central characters, and he's played really well. And what he does, he keeps cooking up these fake allegations of the place is rife with criminals, prostitutes, and ponces. That phrase becomes key because he keeps repeating it over and over again. And we heard, when I was reading from the pamphlet, you could hear that how that's reflecting the language of the Member of Parliament of North Kensington at that time. So one of the kind of dynamics of the film, and obviously this is based on real life events, is that Frank Crichlow, the owner, he just wants to be a businessman. He just wants to open this restaurant and make good and be, keep his head down and be a peaceful, law-abiding citizen. He wants to be a black middle-class business owner, but the state just won't have it. They just won't accept it. So there's that kind of integration element that I'm sure a lot of people will find very, very, very persuasive, or whatever it is, in this day of, in this day and age of Black Lives Matter and all of the inclusion and diversity and inclusion efforts that are taking place right now. Peace out, Raging Bajan. Nice to see you. So we're then introduced to the two main protagonists, and these are really interesting for different reasons. First of all, the familiar face of Letitia Wright, who you'll know as Shuri from the Black Panther film. So that's the woman in the Black Panther who's the sister of T'Challa, and she's the one with all the technology and so forth. And she turns up in this, and she plays Barbara Beese, I believe that's how you pronounce her name, who's this Guyanese. She's a Guyanese member of the British Black Panther Party, and we find her actually one of the first main scenes she's in. She goes to a factory, and she basically goes to encourage some Asians mainly to join unions and to support collective bargaining. So I think that's an interesting kind of tip to the dynamics of that day. Actually, my brethren, Kevin Bismarck, I have had a lot of chats with him about how back in his day, his dad used to kind of collaborate with Asians quite a lot. And there was that kind of, alliances, those alliances that were being created, as well as including white working class people as well, through their common class interests, because working class people, regardless of your race, you do have common class interests. So that was good. I think Letitia really smashed it in the film. She's brilliant, really, really good. She's got quite a few of the standout scenes. One of the main standout scenes for her, try not to spoil it in case you haven't watched it, but there's a scene in the court during one of the recesses where she just has this outburst, and I think she really captured the emotion of it. She really captured the tension and the sense of hopelessness, allied though to a kind of sense of, we have to do this. We've got no other hope. We've got no other choice. We have to fight. We cannot give up. She's kind of telling Frank Crichlow that they can't give up. She's excellent. And then we're also introduced to the one Darcus Howe. And Darcus Howe he's a well-known, he's really, really well-known. By the 1980s or 90s, by the time I first heard of him, he was kind of a household name. He had his own TV show, The Devil's Advocate. And yeah, he was just a household name. But back then, he was a recent immigrant from Trinidad, and he was a newly qualified barrister and an active member of the Black Panther Party. And if you look at it, when you check out the actor. The guy's name, I think it's something like Malachi. What's his name? Malachi something or another. Sorry, but he looks just like Darcus Howe, and that's one of the things I really like about this film, is that when you look at the real people, the real Mangrove Nine, and then you look at the actors that got to play the Mangrove Nine, the likenesses are brilliant, really, really good. And I don't know, that can't be easy to do, to find a cast of characters who look so much alike to the people they're supposed to be, representing. So yeah, really, really good, really impressive kind of casting on the part of the directors, I'd say. So big ups to them. And then one of the things one of the things I really like about the film, let me just say this as well, is the fact that, now, Raging Bajan, just forgive me on this, but like what people would call small islands, dominate the story here. And this is something that, you know, sometimes when we think of Caribbeans in the UK, and even maybe just Caribbeans, full stop, we think Jamaica, 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 Jamaica. And obviously Jamaica is the biggest Anglophone islands in the Caribbean. It's not the biggest island in the Caribbean. I tell my wife this. My wife's from Jamaica. Well, she's not from Jamaica, but she's Jamaican. And she says, yeah, Jamaica's the biggest island in the Caribbean. And I say, well, no, Cuba is the biggest island in the Caribbean. She's like, no, but you know what I mean. Cuba's not Caribbean, you know, as if the fact that one island, bunch of islands, was colonized by these Europeans, and that island is colonized by those Europeans, means that this bunch of islands isn't Caribbean, you know. But yeah, no, okay. Interestingly, Raging Bajan said you weren't too impressed with the accents. Raging Bajan says, I feel the accents could have been a bit better for some reason, but it was a good portrayal. Yeah, for me, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed hearing some of the slangs that they were using. I really enjoyed. There was one scene in particular where Frank Crichlow, he's in the court again, and he basically gets beat up by the prison officer, and he just lets rip. He just has this rage, this outburst of rage, and he's furious, and he's you know, putting on this. I think it's a Trini accent. I think. And he calls them skunts. And it was a really dark scene, a really intense scene. And my wife was like, that's not funny. Why are you laughing? But it just found me funny. I just found it funny because I'm not used to hearing them kind of slangs, you know. So I really like that. And oh, okay, that's all good. Raging Bajan, your dad's Jamaican. All right, cool. So we're yeah, all good there, all good there. And yeah, that's one thing I really liked about. That's one thing I really liked about the show was the sort of accents and the kind of Bajan and Trini, and I think Guyanese as well, kind of accents and languages that we were not languages you could say, you know, accents and patois that we were hearing. They're really good. I really liked that aspect of the film. Cuba, yeah, exactly. Cuba's only 90 miles away from Jamaica. You know, you could probably swim there if you're a strong swimmer. You can see Jamaica from Cuba. When I went to Cuba, the one time I went to Cuba, we went to Santiago de Cuba, which is in the west, or no, it's Baracoa, I think. But anyway, right on the east coast, of Cuba, you can see Jamaica from, you know, on a clear day, which we saw Jamaica, and I was like, oh man. So yeah, that's one thing I really liked about the film. And yeah, I agree, Letitia. Hold on. I agree, Raging Bajan. Letitia is a great. I've only seen her in the Black Panther, and seeing her in this film, I've got a lot of respect for her. She was really good in that film. So massive shout out to Letitia Wright for her performance in this film. And where we got it? Oh. Hey, Jared Ball, big ups. Thank you very much for joining, my brother. Thank you for your live stream as well. Really good. Santiago de Cuba is amazing. Really good. Cuba is just an amazing country, frankly. You know. So yeah, to all my Caribbeans who think that Cuba isn't in the Caribbean, or Hispaniola, the island of what the Haiti and Dominican Republic are on, they are in the Caribbean. You know, we're all the same. So yeah, going back, that's one thing I really liked about the film was the there was another scene as well which I liked. I hope I'm not spoiling too much of this film, by the way. And by the way, if you're not in the UK, if you're in the UK, you can watch Mangrove on BBC iPlayer. But if you're not in the UK, I think you can watch it on, is it Amazon? I think you can watch it on Amazon. Or, you know, if you're resourceful, you can just find a torrent that somewhere and just download it, you know. Hope I'm allowed to say that. I hope this, you know, I don't get flagged for saying that. But you know, in this day and age of you know, free movement of ideas and technology and so forth, we can do that. So yeah, really lots to like about this film. What I quite liked Frank Crichhlow's kind of narrative arc, because he goes from wanting to just be a businessman and not wanting to get involved in politics. He keeps telling Darcus Howe and Barbara to just back off and leave him alone. This isn't about politics and so forth. Every time the Mangrove gets raided, Crichlow keeps seeking help from the state. you know, he keeps going to the police, he keeps going to the council, he goes to the courts, at one point he rings his MP and has to, every single time he's slamming the phone down because they're not helping. His own son, I think it is his son or someone, you know, gets beaten up by the police and slammed in a cell for no reason. You know, Darcus Howe keeps trying to persuade him, you know, you need to get with the program. You are a leader in this community, whether you like it or not, you are a leader. And eventually Crichlow realizes that Darcus is right and Barbara's right, and they agree to this demo to protest against the police brutality. And it's this demo that is the heart of what becomes the Mangrove Nine. They go on this demo, and I won't say too much more about the film because I don't want to spoil it in case, you know. But they go in this demo, and then it turns into a big old fracas or fracas. And so it's 150 black people along with various allies. They go to a police station. Some of the chants I really like. So one of the chants is the pigs. We got to get rid of the pigs. I've not heard that one before. Maybe that was like quite common in the 1970. And at one point they've got a pig's head on display, which I thought was interesting. I thought, poor pig, you know. But of course, this leads to a massive violent response from the police, and basically a bunch of them get arrested. Initially, they're freed by the magistrate's court, but then it goes to the Crown Court at the Old Bailey, which is the most high-profile court in the land, one of the most high-profile courts in the land. And the trial begins, and the trial is what dominates the most of the last kind of 30, 40 minutes of the film. So really good film. Definitely recommend that you watch it. It'll give you a really good insight into the dynamics of the UK, of black people in the UK and our struggles here in the UK. What I would say is that the film does get across the sense of dread and some of the political kind of dynamics that are going on, but I think there are better sources that you can go to get really into the nitty-gritty. I'll recommend that you, for example, do a bit of searching on YouTube and find a film on I think it's called The Mangrove Nine, and this is by a director, the same director who did the film Babylon in 1980, which is a seminal Black British film. You must watch Babylon. The lead singer from Aswad is the lead actor in that. But this guy, what's his name? Rocco. This is a film done in 1973, so a couple of years after the Mangrove Nine case. And in that film, it's got all the interviews with Darcus Howe, with Barbara, with all the Mangrove Nine, and as I say, Steve McQueen's Mangrove film does a decent job of kind of getting across how the state was kind of working together. But you need to hear it from the horses' mouths directly to really get a sense of what they were doing, what their politics were, how they were motivated. Particularly Darcus Howe, he was a very revolutionary man in those days, at least. So yeah, definitely recommend that you watch that other film on the Mangrove Nine. And yeah, but in short, my overall impressions of the film, before I go into comments and we can have an open discussion about these things, my overall comments about the film is that it is a must watch. If you're interested in the Black British experience, you must watch it, especially if you're not within the UK. If you haven't grown up here, definitely watch this film. And I say a big shout out to Steve McQueen. This is actually the first part of a 5-part anthology. So the next part, all of these 5 films are going to be focused on the Black British experience. So really, really impressive stuff, actually. The next part is actually being broadcast tomorrow on Sunday, the 22nd of November, here in the UK on the BBC. And it's going to focus on Lovers Rock. And Lovers Rock is a music scene and a lifestyle that dominated the Black British community in the 1980s, in particular, late 70s, 1980s, whereas up until then, Black people in Britain had really been mainly consuming music from Jamaica, as well as the US, but mainly reggae from Jamaica. And then you had this kind of upturn where a lot of reggae music started to come out from Britain, focused on love, and producers like Dennis Bavell and even musicians like Aswad playing a lot of the instruments and so forth. So that's going to be a really, really good one. A nice change of scenery as well, from going from the darkness of Mangrove to the light and love and happiness of Lovers Rock. So yeah, definitely recommend it. Recommend you watch that. As I say, it's been broadcast Sunday night on BBC, and then I presume Amazon iPlayer or your friendly torrent provider will be able to source those for you fairly straightforwardly. So yeah, good. Yeah, defo. Dr. Jared Ball, get on it. Definitely. Watch Mangrove if you haven't already, and also watch Lovers Rock. All right. So let me get into how should we get onto these comments? Should we start from the oldest? All right, mind and matter. I always want to call you mind over matter, so my bad if I keep calling you that. So greetings family, greetings brother. I presume you're a brother. I presume you're a man. What I mean by that? But definitely a brother as far as your political persuasions and so forth are. But yeah, Notting Hill was poor working class, and this is an interesting. Mind and Matter says this, he says that his granddad owned a house there and sold it in the 1970s. Yeah, he would have made more of it if he held on to it. You know what? There are so many people who own properties in places like Notting Hill, even Hackney, Dalston, Stoke Newington, all these kinds of places, Brixton. Like I say, in those areas, back in those days, those areas were really kind of ghetto areas, run down, sideline, marginalized, undesirable areas. And then obviously this is one of the things I'm quite into, the politics of land, because what eventually happens is that as London starts to progress and develop, and more better infrastructure, better transport links and so forth, areas like these, the hood, the ghetto so-called, the land values go up and up and up and up and up. People who can't afford in the more lucrative parts start to move out into the next affordable places, and then you have places like Notting Hill basically becoming completely unaffordable. And also people who maybe were living there and growing up there when it was the hood so-called, then can't afford to stay there and live there. So I'm sure your granddad is probably Mind and Matter kind of falls into that kind of category. Then you said Mind and Matter. There also needs to be a comparison with the upward mobility between blacks and those from the Indian subcontinent. Yeah. Right now, blacks find it hard to even get those low jobs that their foreparents came to the UK to do. Yeah, I mean, Dr. Amos Wilson talks a lot about how in the US context, at least, black people are essentially becoming, economically, obsolete. They're just not needed anymore. Whereas before there was a need for this, this massive pool of manual labor to go in Detroit to do the cars and all this kind of stuff. That's all gone through the international workings of capital, just flying wherever it goes, and outsourcing jobs and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, it is exactly the same in the UK as well. There are no longer those low-paying jobs in such abundance as there were back in the day for and black people, definitely in the States and definitely in the UK as well, are facing that. Now I'm going to fast forward to a comment here on. Wow. Okay. So where we go. So okay, Raging Bajan, you live a stone's throw from Notting Hill. You'd never guess its past from how it looks now. Yeah, definitely. I used to live in Kensal Green, Kensal Rise for a few years ago, and yeah, it and you know what's going to happen? That whole gentrification thing is going to happen to Harlesden if it already hasn't happened. It probably already has happened, but Harlesden, and the reason I'm saying, people who are not in the UK, somewhere like a Harlesden now is still seen as like one of the remaining ghettos, Stonebridge Estate, ghetto, the reputation, ghetto. And I'm not, when I say ghetto, I'm using the common language. I don't mean to say that these places are bad places or whatever necessarily, but Harlesden, give it 5 years, it was already happening. By the time I moved out of that kind of, Kensal Rise is like next to Harlesden, and I moved out of that area. I used to go to Harlesden all the time to get my hair cut. To be fair, when I did used to go there, on sort of more than one occasion, I couldn't go to the barbers because what's that road called? What's the main road called? Where the 18 bus, I can't remember what the main road is called, but like on more than one occasion, the road was blocked off because there'd been a killing or a shooting the night before. So don't get me wrong, there are issues in these places, but you could see, Harlesden is like, 50. That's Harlesden. I'm pretty sure it's zone 2. If it's not zone 2, it's very, very close to central London. You're very, very close to. It won't take you very long to get into Paddington and the West End and so forth. Harlesden will be gentrified. All of these places, no matter what hood you can think of, it will be gentrified. So, yeah, Jarina Star, peace, greetings, by the way. They would demolish black areas for regeneration. Yeah, that's right. That's one of the things that one of the dynamics. They say, yeah, you'd even say slum clearance was probably a manifestation of that. Slum clearance in the post-war era, where they removed all these like so-called slums and shipped off all these white people actually to Beacontree, I think it is, in Essex, and Southend and all these kinds of places. But you look at some of these East End places now, like Hackney and Dalston and so forth. You could never afford to buy there. I'm from East London originally, and I don't even live in London now. I could never afford to live in East London, especially because East London is like the hotbed of hipsters and affluent folks from out of London, and also city folks basically buying up and buying up the thing. Listen, let's just address this mind over matter thing. You said Mind and Matter said, I used to be Mind Over Matter. I changed my name to Mind and Matter a few weeks ago. Okay, good. Okay, good. I'm glad I'm not going mad. So call you either. By the way, you're a woman. Sorry. Most people mistake you for a man. Yeah. You know what? I need to stop assuming people's sex, because I think I might have done that to Rage Invasion as well. I definitely did it to African Superstar. You just assume, like, this is patriarchy in my head, why do I just assume that if someone's talking about politics, then they have to be a man, So my apologies. I will never do that again, inshallah, or whatever it is that I should say from an African perspective. But yeah, Mind and Matter. You said that your granddad moved out of Notting Hill because of the racism. Wow. Okay, your uncle was the only black kid in his class. They moved to where more black people were. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So that must have been in the kind of 1950s or maybe 40s. And yeah, when I first heard that there were race riots in Notting Hill, like I was like, what? What do you mean race riots? It's like for me it was like, oh, there's race riots in Jamaica, but what? Like anti-black riots in Jamaica? But what do you mean? Who? Everyone's black in Jamaica. But yeah, back in the day. When the black Africans from the Caribbean first started coming over to places like Notting Hill, they were not in the majority at first. The Rage Invasion, you said that Kensal is changing. Yeah, Harlesden has begun. They changed the road direction. Oh, there's a Costa Coffee. Okay, so you were born in Harlesden. It's changing, and I don't like it. Yeah, it's regular as clockwork. The first place that when I first came to this country, the first place that we lived was Clapton, Hackney, in an estate called the Nightingale Estate. Google it, you'll see and that was, we lived on a tower block, 16th floor of a tower block, and it was, I was young. We moved out. We moved out of there when I was 10. But like, you could tell this is, in retrospect, that was the hood. But it was our area. It was our community, and I know now, because I've worked quite a few times in the city or in the outskirts of the city, and a lot of people I work with live in Clapton, live in Hackney, in Leighton, in Stratford, Walthamstow, and they're bringing with them the coffee shops, the boutiques, all this sort of stuff. It's regular as clockwork. Whichever hood you can talk about, this happens. Oh, what's going on? Oh, it's a bit of a Halsden reunion then. Mind and Matt was born in Halsden too. I was not born in Halsden. I was born in Nairobi, Kenya. So there you go. Mind and Matt, you said as well. You said they are gradually encroaching on Halsden. Yeah, it is one of the poorest boroughs in London. Yeah, most of my family are there. Scrubs, Harrow Road. That's the road I was trying to think of. Scrubs Lane and Harrow Road was always closed off when crime happened in Halsden. Yeah, it was like it was sad because on one or two occasions it was someone has died. Someone has died there. But yeah, Halsden. I loved Halsden, man. I wish I still lived near a place like a Halsden because it's kind of the main centre of Halsden, for example. There's no kind of hype. London is full of hype areas that have just got this swole head thing where there's people walking around thinking that they're so special and the hipsters and this, that, and the other. Halsden didn't have that, thankfully. Halsden was just normal people, there were communities. There were there was a big, very strong Caribbean. That's probably one of the last few extremely Caribbean parts of London, probably. I mean, yeah, Brixton used to be, but not so much these days. But there were also, there were Somali communities. There were Eastern Europeans were there as well. And you could get what you wanted. You could get what you wanted from the shops there. Plenty takeaways, Caribbean takeaways to pick from. Plenty, barbers for me to choose from, and so on. And just, I don't know. I never felt in all of these areas. I never feel like I'm at risk of getting attacked or nothing like that, crime and so forth. But of course, there are problems. There are problems in those kinds of areas. Yeah, always something in Halsden and Stonebridge Estate with the old blocks was a nightmare, honestly. Them knocking down the blocks down was probably the best regeneration for the area, says the Raging Bajan. So, okay. Yeah, and that's the thing. Some of these estates, I mean, I really love the history of London and just how, how they went around building all these estates and the decisions they made. And some of those estates they just threw up like with cardboard and paper. Like they were really not very well built, even physically, constantly having to be reinforced because they were so shoddily built. And also, what were they thinking building these? Like Aswad have got a song called African Children Live in a Concrete Situation, and that kind of encapsulates like these concrete dungeons that they built. The Trellick Tower is another example. I mean, that these planners probably thought, oh yes, we can solve overcrowding by building these massive skyscraping, build these communities in the sky. But all you end up doing is, especially when you've got all of the social economic dynamics of these areas, of course you're going to end up with a whole bunch of crime. And one of the things that happened as well is that I think it was in 1979 or 80 or thereabouts, they changed the law so that people who, basically the people they prioritized to put into these council estates were people with known social problems already. Whereas before, there was, when they first built them, there was quite a prestige thing. Like, yeah, I'm going to move into this new estate, like that estate in Elephant and Castle called, I can't remember what it's called, but these are prestige estates. But then they changed it and they basically funneled in all the people who had been, had been experiencing all these social problems. They filled these estates with those problems, and so you end up, of course, with all of these crime and violence and so forth. Yes, there are problems, no doubt about that. Let me not deny that. Minor matter. Remember when they knocked down Chalk Hill Estate? That place was worse than Stonebridge and the others. Okay. Raging Bajan said, where is it? Queen's Park. Yeah, Queen's Park is close to Kensal Rise, and Queen's Park is very gentrified. Yeah, very close to Hampstead and Finchley Road, expensive areas. That's one thing about London, that you just, you can be. I mean, even Hackney, where I used to live in Hackney, is like that. Kensal Rise is definitely like that. Ladbroke Grove, all of these places are like that, where you're on one road. You've got these, these massive townhouses that would go for £1 million to purchase easily, and then on the next road you could have some sprawling council estate tower block. It's mad how the poverty alongside the wealth goes hand in hand. And I mean, of course, we have to mention Grenfell Tower. Grenfell Tower, right next door to some gentrified estate. But wow, some really good comments, some really good insight going in here. So mind the matter makes me laugh. You pass South Kilburn Estate now, you have a big M&S, and then past the station it's pure Oyimbo town. Yeah, for those who know what Oyimbo means, you could say Wazungu as well. Planet Organic, yoga studios, hippie cafes. Yeah, I mean, Queen's Park is, I used to go there sometimes. Where did I used to go to Queen's Park? I can't remember. But I used to sometimes drive through, going to Camden or whatever. And yeah, Kilburn's another place that is, it's on its way. It's been gentrified. The gentrifying is happening, and then, yeah, wow, man, I should have really got out more when I was in Kensal Rise and them areas. So Minded Matt said, housing is prioritized for single mothers and the rest of people find it hard to afford a room. Yeah, it's so expensive. Government encourages the cycle of single parenthood. Yeah, I think they do. They do. I think that, I mean, there's no, ultimately you improve the, if you improve the employment prospects, if you improve the educational provision, if you improve, access to, how can I put it? If people, had access to the social networks that you really need to have access to in order to succeed in these kind of societies, then you would deal with all of those problems. Even single parenthood, you would make it so that single parenthood wasn't so much of a problem for those women who find themselves as single mothers and for the children, because they'll have the networks around them to kind of support them. But also B, you would deal with the root cause as to why, for example, girls are having children at younger ages, and why boys are not hanging around to look after their children. But obviously, the government can only do so much. Obviously, we as communities have to do what we can do to kind of help to solve these problems. Yeah, Holsden, Kilburn, all them places, just any black area, frankly. Peckham is another one. But I know for a fact that Peckham is on the gentrification train right now. Peckham, what's that? New Cross, all them sorts of areas it's just too obvious. If basically it's like it's a law. It's like a law. If you have area here where there are a lot of jobs, a lot of services, a lot of great transport stations, train stations, whatever, blah blah blah, and you have an area that's here, but that's 2 miles away from like the main train station or whatever, that area is never going to stay ghetto. It's never going to stay ghetto. It will always the landlord, the investors will start sniffing around. The buy-to-let landlords will start to sniff around. They will start to realize that, well, hold on a minute, there are all these so-called young professionals who need somewhere to live, and it's it's no, I don't mean that to say that, oh, this is something bad on the young professionals. That's, of course, be a young professional. That's what we're kind of here for, you know, to make a life for ourselves and so forth. But I'm just reflecting that it is this basic law that eventually the progress in a city is going to mean that, you know, the desirable area is going to become wider and wider and wider and wider. And house prices in New Cross are worth about £1 million right now. Does not surprise me. With the building of the London Overground, because I'm from East London, but North East London, and New Cross is East London, but it's South East London, Peckham, New Cross, all those areas. But I never once went to any of those parts of South East London when I was young, coming up, because there was no way of going there. I didn't drive because I was young, but whereas I could very easily go to Brixton just on a tube from Walthamstow Central, 25 minutes. I'm in Brixton, South West London. And West London was, again, tube from, you know, Central Line. You could get from Stratford to Notting Hill in 25 minutes. South East London would involve some longness of, I don't know how you'd even get that, maybe a bus or, like, you know, it was long. So South East London was not desirable. Rotherhithe, all those kinds of places. But now they've built they're building more and more transport links. Them new crosses and so forth are just going to be booming right now. Very enticing for investment purposes and very enticing just for people to live in. I wouldn't have minded living somewhere close to around them kind of areas, but I don't have that 1 million English pound sterling to spare right now. Never will, frankly. Oh, mind the matter, you grew up in South London, Peckham, when very little. Okay, yeah. So Jarina Star, you said the sea is where they want black people to go. Yeah, I mean, frankly, you know what? Yeah, I mean, this kind of goes into the sort of Afro-pessimism thing a bit, but frankly, black people, we always do seem to almost be like, you know, not subject in all of this. We're just objects. We're just there to be priced out of certain areas, kind of thing, if you know what I mean. We're just there to be our shops. Whenever we build anything, whenever we have bookshops and record shops and all these kinds of things, whenever we build Tottenham is another example, area I know very well. I used to live in Wood Green for a while, and Tottenham, West Green Road, I remember down by West Green Road, the junction with Kingsland Road, or whatever Kingsland Road is called at that point, the A10, I think it is. Over the 4 years that I was living there, it went from body music, the big body music, you know, then body music, the landlord wanted to kick them out. David Lammy got involved to try and save body music records. And then eventually, last thing I saw in West Green Road, body music was gone and they had turned into a Costa Coffee. Also, across the other side of the road, there used to be just some like random grocers that you could just get various things like big bags of rice and stuff right across the road from there. Gone. It's a Sainsbury's local, you know. And I have family who live in Tottenham Hale, and Tottenham Hale is another one. Tottenham Hale, that's where Mark Duggan was shot, just right near Tottenham Hale. But you try buying a property in Tottenham Hale, you're crazy. It's just not going to happen. Again, Tottenham, very black area. It will not be a very black area for very long. Trust me. The gentrification is real, and it's a law. It's like a law of nature, unless it's opposed. Unless it is opposed. Yeah, Southeast London, less of a black community than Northwest London. Yeah, Southeast London, so Peckham in particular, it's the heartland of the Nigerian, the black African community. But yeah, it historically wasn't an area that I even thought about as being a kind of black area back in the day, but it really is now if you go down to Peckham. But again, that's going to change because Peckham is like, you know, next on the gentrification gravy train. Okay, cool. We're going to stream for about another 5 minutes or so. Loving this conversation, by the way. Yeah, of course. The Raging Bajan says that Crossrail will have a part to play. Absolutely, because whenever you have a transport link, that basically shrinks the distance between, even if it's outside London, outside of London, which back in the day might have taken 45 minutes, an hour to get into, say, Liverpool Street or somewhere like that. Then you have Crossrail, which is going to open up the so-called Thames Gateway. And that's your places like, what's that place called? Oh, I've forgotten. What's the bridge? There's a bridge. I can't remember what it's called. Sorry. But that whole Thames Gateway, the estuary, the Thames estuary, where the Thames goes out of London and it goes all big like that. Kent, that kind of Kent, part of Kent. You're going to see exploding house prices there. I know a lot of Nigerians, for example, are moving down to them kind of Kent areas. Dartford, that's it. Dartford Crossing, Dartford Bridge. That is where you're going to see skyrocketing prices, because now when Crossrail, kicks in, you're going to be able to go from wherever, these parts of Essex and Kent and so forth, to Liverpool Street in 15 minutes. It takes 15 minutes for someone to get to Liverpool Street from Walthamstow, from zone 3 parts of London, so transport is absolutely key. Most definitely. Mind the matter, Tottenham has good vibes. Yeah, I love Tottenham. The only problem with Tottenham is that Tottenham Hotspur FC, and me being an Arsenal fan, I can't be dealing with no Tottenham Hotspur FC. Whenever I used to be down there, it was just like, ugh, I have to walk past the stadium, But yeah, Tottenham it's a great part of town. A lot of vibes there, a lot of history, a lot of culture, a lot of Black heritage in Tottenham. Peace. Astro I. I'm just going to say Astro I. It says, greetings from the States. Same thing happened to my area in Philly. Now only Africans open businesses, even though they don't stay around long. Okay. Yeah, these dynamics, particularly for us in the diaspora, they're regular as clockwork. You have Harlem, I presume, is probably another kind of, in New York, probably experiences that same kind of dynamic, that and I suppose, a question to be had is, how can you counteract that? What can you do as a community to counteract that? Mind the matter, I think you said something earlier. Here we go. Yeah, you said Black people need to hold on to their houses and stop selling. Yeah, it'd be interesting to hear from people who have sold their property. So my parents still live in East London, and they bought their house in the 80s, but they're still there. They've got no intention of moving anywhere, frankly, But even yeah, it'd be interesting to know what it is. Is it that people want to move out? They don't want to be in the hustle and bustle. They don't want to be around all of the problems that you can get in inner city areas, perhaps. But you do, I think, when people, maybe it's because people are kind of acting as individuals a bit too much, and they're not thinking about, okay, well, how can we as a people, as a community, local community, how can we collaborate and cooperate and turn this area into something that we want it to turn into? And this is where I don't like to compare different racial groups, because we've all got different histories. We all come from different kinds of backgrounds, even economic backgrounds. But that is where there is a conversation to be had with regard to Asians, South Asians in the UK, where they've been able to turn certain parts of the London and certain parts of other cities in Britain into enclaves that are, well-to-do, so-called. Is there something that we can work? I don't know. We can learn from? I don't know. Tottenham has good words. They built this big stadium. Yeah, so that big stadium in Tottenham, I mean, my goodness me, that, it's funny. Tottenham were almost going to move to Stratford, which is near where my parents live. And I was like, oh God, no, don't move there. That would just be terrible. But thankfully they didn't. But yeah, that massive stadium, this state-of-the-art stadium, which I believe they want to hold some NFL games at this Tottenham stadium now, because they got to pay it off. And yet that's what I used to even think before they built the new stadium. I used to walk down Tottenham High Road and just when I was like being a stupid football Arsenal fan, I used to think, look how run down this area is. Because when you go to Arsenal Stadium, the Emirates, you know, all kinds of political and economic dynamics behind that. The Emirates, sponsored by the Emirates Stadium, but the Emirates in that part of London, in what's that, Finsbury Park and Highbury and all that sort of stuff, it's more well-to-do basically. That's you know, that's a hipsterville. But Tottenham High Road, it is a depressed area, and Tottenham Council actually fought, or Haringey Council fought tooth and nail to keep Tottenham in Haringey and to persuade them to not go to Stratford in Newham, because if they go to Tottenham Hotspur, is, I think, it might be the biggest single employer in Haringey apart from the council. So, you know, it just made economic sense for the council to keep them there, even if it meant trampling along on a bunch of small businessmen who had to lose their properties and lose their businesses to accommodate Tottenham Hotspur. Jared Ball said, does that mean it's good politics to support the Hotspurs? No. And I believe there's a Spurs. Is there a basketball team called the Spurs? Don't support the Spurs. That sounds too much like Tottenham Hotspurs. No, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. If you've got any insight into British football, just don't support Tottenham Hotspur. Would be my advice. You know, they're the force of darkness. Yeah. Okay. So let's go through some of the last few comments. So yeah. So the Raging Beijing, kind of like them redoing Wembley Stadium. Yeah. Well, Chalk Hill sits right there at Mind the Matter. Now they have all this fancy outlet, civic centers, places for American tourists. Yep. Mind the Matter says, and how many people benefit from the area? Even got jobs from it. Yeah. Blacks did not benefit. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Good point. These new blacks think very individualistically, not for their generations. Yeah, true. And Wembley Stadium, yeah, you're right. Wembley Stadium is another point, because I remember that new stadium that they built there, like, you know, cost, I mean, was it several hundreds of £1 million by the time it was built, several years over, what's the word, over budget and over schedule. And then it's not going to, well, I mean, it will be generating some jobs, but ultimately the people who are making the big money from your Wembley stadiums, from your Tottenham Hotspur stadiums, from your Emirates stadiums and so on, are not going to be the local black, you know, the black communities in those areas. No, who've been basically, it's almost like black people, we're caretakers for these areas. We look after them, keep them, you know, keep them going, build up a community, to entice people want to come in, whether it's Brixton or Harlesden or Handsworth in Birmingham, and so people want to come in and, you know, sample our culture and so forth. And then the gentrification thing kicks in, and it's like, you know what? Yeah, see you guys. Thanks. We'll take it from here, guys. Thank you. You know, yeah. And just reinforcing that the communities don't benefit a lot of. So I can tell you the estate didn't benefit. That's Chalk Hill Estate didn't benefit from Wembley Stadium. A lot of community workers complained about it. Okay. Yeah, and Dr. Ball, San Antonio Spurs. Okay, and who, if anyone, should you support in the Premier League? I mean, you know, don't support anyone. But if you need to support anyone, support Arsenal. Arsenal. No, don't. The thing is, it depends. Like, so me and my children, I've got this thing with regard to my sons. I'm like, look, if they're gonna get into football, they probably need to support a team that's going to win a lot, so that they don't have to face those dark days of defeats that me as an Arsenal fan, I'm just used to now. So it might be an idea to just sell your soul and just support someone like a Manchester City, who are bankrolled by is it Dubai or Qatar? One of those, I think it's Qatar, own Manchester City Football Club. They also own you know, various teams around the world as well. And just the law of averages is, if you want success, if you want to be, you know, celebrating a bunch of victories, you probably want to support the team that is bankrolled by some oil magnate or something like that. So you probably want to go for Man City. But if you want to keep it, you know what? If you want to keep it real and, you know, down with the people and so forth, maybe you want to go and support a team like AFC Wimbledon, you know, who are a lower league team, but they are owned by the fans. They've got this amazing history where the team was bought. The original Wimbledon FC was bought by some businessmen, and they took it to outside of London to a town called Milton Keynes. The Wimbledon fans were not having it, and they started a rival team called AFC Wimbledon, and that team worked its way up from the very bottom, non-league, you know, walked all the way, get promoted and promoted and promoted all the way up through the leagues, and now I think they're in the same league as MK Dons, who was that new franchise team that were created. Support a team like that, AFC Wimbledon, someone like that. I'd probably recommend, to be honest, Dr. Wall, especially for someone of your revolutionary character. Cool. So last few comments, and I'm gonna have to shoot off. I can hear my son banging on the radiator downstairs, so he's after me. Let me not shut off the conversations here though. So Minder Matter said, yeah, if they don't want to live in the house, then rent the thing out. Yeah, rent it out. Yeah, there you go. Become a landlord, if anything, you know. But then I don't know. Or is there a way that people can stay in these areas? That would be good. That would be good. Is there a way that we can, rather than, I mean, that's good, you know, in a wealth perspective, you can become a landlord and you'll generate an income. Yeah, fair enough. But is there a way that we can be looking at more community-based things like land trusts or things on those lines? In the UK, it's difficult. It's not as easy for Black people in the UK to do anything like that because we're so scattered and we're in such small numbers. But whereas in places like the US, they can definitely do. It's more easy to do things like that because you've got such large numbers. And I was just about to say Dr. Ball, but Jared says, "All right, good. Peace, family." Okay, stop. Don't say Dr. Ball. Don't say Dr. Ball. It's the African deference in me, you know, that I wouldn't call someone who's older. Generally, wouldn't want to be calling them by their first. I assume you. I mean, you are older than me, but someone who's like, you know, I consider to be, you know, esteemed and so forth. Like, yeah, I wouldn't want to call you by your first name, but I'll try and remember that for future reference. And guys, by the way, make sure you check out I Mix What I Like, which is Jared Ball's YouTube channel. I Mix What I Like. For many years now, he has been putting out a whole range of really interesting, really engaging, really revolutionary insight into various aspects of the media industry in particular. So check it out. I Mix What I Like. And imixwhatilike.org, I believe. Should I type it in? imixwhatilike.org. That shows there. Oh, okay, it's just one I. Oh, that's spelt wrong. Hold on. imixwhatilike.org. That's right. Yeah, there we go. Check that out. imixwhatilike.org. And in particular, check out his book, which is the myth of Black buying power. Check it out. Cool. Okay, so just before we close, let's go through these comments here. So Jarina Star said, today this Chinese international couple grew up to me for reading a book outside. I said, what, haven't you ever seen a Black person read before? They don't communicate with the local community. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the house price inflation in London is driven by Chinese investors, actually. And yeah, I mean, obviously in the continent, both in the continent and also in the Caribbean, the impact of Chinese, you know, Kabaka Pyramid, the Jamaican dancehall reggae artist Kabaka Pyramid. He's got a song called "Well Done," and in that song he says, the whole of Jamaica is a Chinese loan or something like that. You know, it's interesting. And Dr. Amos Wilson talked a lot about the Chinese. He was talking obviously in the late, in the 1990s, and he talked a lot about the rise of the Asian power in the world. And back then, not many of us in the conscious community were probably listening to that, because we just thought of China as like poor and still communist and so forth. But China was already at that point opening up to capitalism and like putting their plans into place that we're seeing manifested now. So there you go. Cool. All right, let's have a look here. Just a couple more of these comments. The Raging Bajan says, interesting you say that. I went to school in South Kilburn. Oh, there was a conversation about education here, wasn't it? Yeah, here we go. So Mind the Matter said, she went to school in South London and North London. There is much more deliberate institutional racism in Northwest London. They mark down black students to discourage them. Interesting. And then Raging Bajan said, interesting you say that. I went to school in South Kilburn. The teachers were deliberately giving us C's and D's because they couldn't control us. If you haven't watched my video on black children and special educational needs, then that kind of fits right into that, actually. So that's not good to hear. And Mind the Matter says, I'm afraid to have kids unless I have money to keep them out of state-run schools. Ugh, gosh, I mean, that's a conversation that me and my wife we've had this conversation before, haven't we? On one of my streams about the whole homeschooling thing. And the Raging Bajan, maybe I'll finish off on here if that's all right. It says, I think homeschooling may be the next best thing for a Saturday school or a Saturday school setting. Yeah, this 5-day-a-week thing isn't what they make it out to be. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I must do. Education is a topic that I'm gonna hit quite often, hopefully in my streams on a regular basis. So yeah, definitely. Okay, family, I want to say thank you guys so much. Oh, by the way, please make sure if you haven't liked the stream, please do like it. Again, algorithms, the what do you call it? The YouTube, that's the one. YouTube algorithms respond well to videos that get liked. So please make sure that you do like it and share it as well. Share the thing as well. Share the conversation out with your networks. And yeah, so thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed I'm glad that you guys enjoyed my breakdown of the film, Mangrove film. Again, go and check it out if you haven't already done so. Thanks for joining and for the input. Just type in here. It's not easy to type and talk, is it? Joining. There we go. Thanks for joining on the input. Yeah, so peace to all of everyone who's joined in today. So peace to Jared Ball, not Dr. Jared Ball. I'll call you Brother Jared Ball. Peace to Mind the Matter. Peace to Raging Bajan. Peace to Jarina Star. And peace and love to everyone else. Oh, peace to Astro I as well. Just tracking back through the comments. Yeah. And peace to everyone who joins this, watches this on replay as well. Okay. Yes. Blessings, peace and blessings to all of you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah. All right. There we go. All right. Thank you. Asanteni sana and kwaherini from London.